Hello and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. In this video, I want to look at incredible journeys, and really just one of them, the Lewis and Clark expedition, land journeys. We've seen some pretty interesting journeys on water, and I thought, well, let's have a look at a land one. And I get the idea from The Incredible Journey. It was a book by Sheila Burnford. She sets it in northwestern Ontario, which is a massive, huge province. It seems to go on forever. And it involves an old dog, a young Labrador, and a Siamese cat. It's quite a story, quite an incredible journey that they take. Now, the journey that I'm thinking about is really, I think the basis of it starts with French explorer La Salle canoeing down rivers, down the Mississippi, all the way down to New Orleans, and consequently gives France a claim to all the lands in that watershed that come down. Now, the size of that watershed, I found that if I typed into Google Mississippi River and its tributaries, map of, or map of the Mississippi River Basin, I'd get maybe a map, and I did. A number of maps to choose from. I found, looking at the one that showed up currently, that was green on a blue background, that area is almost a fan-shaped area, reminding me of a tree or something, or organic, maybe fan coral, but I think of a tree because I'm still think trees in the background. That's the status when the American colonies, after the French Indians were fighting the English and all, after the American Revolution, there's this new nation with a new system of governance. You voted for your representatives, and they were elected for terms, unlike, say, Queen Victoria, who ruled for so long. The third president is Thomas Jefferson, and he's seen how people that lived in Virginia, when it gets a little crowded, sometimes they move on. They go through gaps in the Appalachian Mountains, or even over some of the lower mountains and down into Kentucky, like Daniel Boone did, or into Ohio, and this nation's growing, and wouldn't it be great if we could somehow establish some working relationship with the French in terms of that big expanse that they don't seem to have been doing anything to settle. It would also be great if we didn't have to pay duty from goods that are being shipped by boat down the Ohio River into the Mississippi to New Orleans, if it was ours. So that's a thought that's been in his head for a while. Now, there's another story going on. One thing leads to another. History is really just an amalgamation of stories and coincidences and whatever. The the American Revolution had involved the French, people like Jefferson, and who was an ambassador there, and Ben Franklin, and now the French people are inspired to revolt against their monarchy, and that turmoil that followed that in France, horrific, and along came a man, Napoleon, who said, if I could only create something that would divert people's attention from their humble way of living, that would put an end to this. So he starts to do military things. And the French are just, if you look at Goya's art about what the French did to the Spaniards, Spanish, and he realizes, though, the only way that's going to last is if I can continue to pay my soldiers. What have I got that I could draw upon? Oh, I've got that real estate over in the New World that we haven't really done anything about and probably never will. And if we did develop it, we'd have to fortify it against these new. Well, why don't I try to sell that? And this was going on coincidentally with Jefferson asking his ambassador to inquire if they'd be interested in selling it. So a price is fixed upon, and the United States buys this huge amount of countryside. First thing Jefferson wants to do is to explore it. Get in there, find out what we've got. Somebody that can tell us about any plants that can be used, and the animal life, the indigenous people. And he thought of a man that he knew who lived in the same part, grew up in the same part of Virginia that he had, Meriwether Lewis. So he contacts Meriwether Lewis, and Meriwether Lewis says, yeah, I'd be very excited and interested in doing that. And Lewis suggests that they get a second in command that would actually be on par with him, would also be a captain. In case anything should happen, injury or whatever, on this journey, that someone's leadership would be acknowledged by the men. And he thinks of a man that he'd served during the Revolutionary War under in the western part of those battles. And that man's name is Clark. And Clark was one of 6 brothers, one of the youngest ones. And so William Clark, he writes to William Clark, and suggesting everything to him. And William Clark's living in Kentucky. Now, it takes a while for that letter to get to him. And while it's going there, Meriwether Lewis has been buying things for the trip, getting equipment to take, and he has had this design about a modular boat frame made with metal that could be taken down apart and carried from overland from one water to some other place, and then reconstructed again, and new birch bark put on and tar put over that and used. And he's got a man designing that, working on it in Pittsburgh. Well, he's waiting to hear, and he's waiting to hear, and he hasn't heard yet. So he decides, well, I better see if I can get somebody else that might be interested. So he talks to somebody else. And that person says, yeah, I'd be interested in going. So he says, I'll let you know. Fortunately, the man that's working on building this is indolent. He doesn't get into it and get it done. And so he's waiting and waiting. And finally, the letter that William Clark had sent him arrives. I mean, I think of the way communications are today. You send a message and, within a day, likely someone's checked and noticed, and you get back to you, and or even almost momentarily get back to you. Well, there they are. Now they've got the two leaders. And where would you learn more about these people? Well, let me just let you get an idea of the core that's going. There's going to be a number of French boatmen who are going to help with First Nations, going up the various rivers, hunting. So he's got them about 6 or 7, and there's going to be, he's going to take his big Newfoundland dog, and William Clark says, I want to take my servant, who's a big black man. And they have, that works out really well, because when they meet the First Nations people, they're not in uniform and with their guns and come meaning bringing trouble. They're making contact and polite and respectful and trying to learn. They've got some people who can help with the language. Later on, they got Sacagawea. She can use sign language and communicate with the other people. It's going to be a mixed group, and when we're in camp, they're surprised that, First Nations people have never seen a black man before, and they're sort of, or this huge Newfoundland dog. So there's diversions and there's music, the French fiddle player and things like that, and it just smooths the transition along really well. The whole journey there and back, one man dies. So it was pretty amazing in that regard. Now, where can you learn more about this? Well, here's my standby. To the Pacific with Lewis and Clark, the American Heritage Junior Library. And I want to show you one thing in it. This is a portrait that a famous painter by the name of Peale did. Both of these portraits after the. This is William Clark. the older man who had been commander for Meriwether Lewis. And I don't know, they just seem steady. There's dependability. I mean, they just look like these are people who would be good leaders. I don't know why I interpret it that way, but that's my reaction. So there's this book, which is a great starting point. Then, if you want to know more about Sacagawea, Scott Odell wrote a novel about her. Streams to the river, river to the sea is the title. You know, she was truly amazing. Her husband, Frenchman, is with them, and along the way, she's pregnant, and along the way she gives birth to her first son. What an amazing endurance, and what a woman. A big dog called Seaman, S-E-A-M-E-N, tells, in part, using diary excerpts and then followed with the dog's point of view, something we've seen quite recently in some of the books that I mentioned. One thing leads to another. The journey with the Lewis and Clark tribe. Roland Smith. He's written a couple of other very interesting books. So if I spot one of his books, this is about the youngest man. I think he was 18 at the time that this started, and he caught the attention of Clark and Lewis because his mother, I believe it was, had sent him a diary to write down what he saw and what happened each day. And so this is My Travels with Captains Lewis and Clark by George Shannon. It's a novel by Kate McMullen. M-C-M-U-L-L-A-N. I don't know if I mentioned this, but Clark says to Lewis, he says, because the government will not upgrade him from first lieutenant to a captain. They actually only give him a second lieutenant rating. And Lewis says to him, we're both going to be paid the same way. I'll be sure that you are reimbursed at a captain's pay. We're both going to be called captains by the men, and we're a partnership in this. Well, what an amazing thing to realize and to say and get that on a par. I'm sure that's the mindset, that's the for success. There's another book that's been recently, so these are for teenagers, and this one as well. It's called New Found Land by Alan Wolfe, and he does an amazing job of giving voice to the characters, having them speak and share their thoughts in a very neat way, and a lot of research, and I really liked this book. Alan Wolfe, W-O-L-F, and I spell it only that sometimes it has a double F. The other thing is that this is a cassette tapes. Probably, I don't know if you can get, but this might be available. It's called The Essential Lewis and Clark. It was, the editor was Landon Y. Jones, and it's read by Peter Friedman and Tom Wopat, actors. And they do a fantastic job breathing life into the stories, as do these books, the novels. So thanks for listening. Until next time, bye for now.